It takes a lot of water to produce our energy. It takes a lot of energy to move our water. There's a total lift of about 2,000 feet with a dozen or so separate pumping plants to do that lift. The canal is 300 some miles long as it comes into Phoenix and then heads south to Tucson. And it is the largest user of electricity in the state of Arizona. We need to pump water 24 hours a day, whether the sun is shining or not. And coal provided that reliability.
For half a century, coal has been one of the cheapest forms of electricity available. It's no longer so cheap. The shift to clean energy in electric vehicles is already happening, and is happening faster than anyone expected. Now our task is to manage that transition to ensure that it is both just and sustainable.
There's a lot of economic prosperity that's going to come along with this transformation. But there are going to be costs. Some whole categories of jobs are just going to disappear.
Take a new job far from home or face unemployment. That's the decision facing hundreds of employees of the Navajo Generating Station.
Last year, officials from the Navajo Nation and Salt River Project decided to shut down the plant.
It is emotional. A lot of people, when they lose their livelihood, it's like losing a loved one. That meal is not there no more. The payment for the mortgage or the payment for the vehicle, those are all gone.
Our daily routines and habits, all the way up to the way we organize geopolitics, the way we distribute wealth and power in the world, are wrapped up in this thing that we call the energy system. So when we change it, we're going to get changes in everything else at the same time. We need to start learning now, and we need to learn at a pace and a scale that we've never learned before.
Like 1940, there's only 400,000 people, population in the state of Arizona. Now we got 7 million people. For 50 years now, we gave low-cost energy and power for the state of Arizona so they could have what they have now. We didn't profit from it.
For decades, a large portion of the Navajo Nation's income has derived from coal royalties. Coal that was mined here and used to produce energy for Phoenix, Vegas, and California didn't yield a quality of life that the people in Phoenix, Vegas, and California enjoy.
The raw resources, Navajo resources, were purchased at low prices, rock bottom prices. Navajo water from the upper basin Colorado River was used to help with the operation of the Navajo Generating Station. We waived our rights to claim any of that water for the duration of the power plant, and we never got any payment for it.
There used to be a lot of water around here. We didn't have to travel a distance to get water. So I would say that we spent more money for our water than people that have running water. Because we had to buy gas, we had wear and tear on our vehicle to get water from the chapter house and haul them back for our drinking water or for our livestock. I'm glad that they're shutting it down. But we would like to see them to fix it the way it was before. and they just can't leave, leave it like that and leave.
I'm 50 years old and these guys are just now leaving. And I've spent the prime of my life battling the pollution here and not being able to herd sheep on my family ancestral land and not being able to farm here. And so I never got a chance to use any of this land.
The plant was built when I was in high school. My dad was hired by SRP to work at the plant. So it was important to our family that he was employed there, and it was a good thing for us. I started at SRP in 1979 as an operator trainee. Once the plant was built and people were employed there, I think we thought it was just going to be there forever. There was no thought that it was ever going to close down. People had raised their families there. It just seemed like part of the community. So the news of shutting it down really was a shock, I think, to everyone. It was just unexpected. I had always thought I was going to retire there, but word came down that we weren't going to be economically viable anymore.
As much as the Navajo Nation has depended on the coal and this operation, it has never really brought prosperity to the nation, and it has never really taken the nation out of the high unemployment rate that persists even today.
I'm a union iron worker for local Ironworkers 433 in LA. So it's a ways from here to find work, but that's the only place I can find work. Nothing around here for us. So you got the mine and the plant, there's only 600 workers, but there's 300,000 of us. And then where do they find work? There's no work at home. So you got mom and dads having to travel that far away to find work, and you got your kids at home with grandma, grandpas, and having the whole nation 50% unemployed, and then you got 60% of people in poverty.
What we're confronted with now is declining government resources and a larger population to sustain. The great opportunity here is to invest in solar or wind for communities that have bore the brunt and the adverse impacts of extraction, but never received the appropriate compensation for giving up land, water, cultural or religious resources that may be contaminated forever. It's critical that we chart a new path defined by our traditional values, being able to have a family, your animals, and multi-generations living in the community you've always lived in. And at the same time, participate in the modern world and in the community of nations.
I think we have a design challenge. The way that we design the ownership of that energy, the geography of that energy, the way that we design the markets, it is the opportunity of a century to build a low carbon future that does more for us than just replace the energy system that we have with a new one. And that's one of the things we can start learning with what's happening here in Arizona around the Navajo Nation, because we've never tried to do anything like this on this scale, this complexity, this deeply integrated into our human systems.
We have a long and not so great relationship with the federal government, not to mention all the other entities that have come on and off the Navajo Nation. We're still a sovereign nation. And when we say sovereign, that means we can determine our own destiny. It's not only a trust issue between the Navajo people and outside entities. It's a trust issue between we as well as the Navajo government and our Navajo communities. We're a big government. We have about 300,000 members, and that means we have to build consensus among our own Navajo people and our own communities. If you don't have a total buy-in of the whole community, the discontent with one stakeholder who's not happy with the process, their discontent kind of grows and it starts reaching into other parts of the community, and pretty soon you don't have that buy-in. There's no trust of the process anymore, and people feel left out.
We collectively need to win. I don't give a damn which party wins. I want answers. When a conflict arises, that ability to pick up the phone and call the city manager and say, this is what my attorneys are telling me, and that we need to go to court with you. What are your attorneys telling you? And can we kick the attorneys out of the room and solve this problem? That's essential.
Arizona Public Service Company has been the largest provider of electricity in the state of Arizona for more than 100 years. We operate 2 coal-fired power plants, one in northeastern Arizona, and that's the Cholla Power Plant. And that plant is slated to close in 2025. And we announced that closure in 2015. It is really important to start planning before there are plans to formally close the plant and start talking about what will happen when the plant closes. It is never too early to begin these conversations. So you would have regulators and legislators at the table, you would have your Public Utility Commission representatives at the table, environmental groups, faith groups, labor organizations, and then obviously the electric utility. And a lot of these folks bring different perspectives, and that's one of the challenges in this space, is figuring out how to reconcile those perspectives.
You can't over-communicate. We're beginning to think about other power plants that we have. What's the transition that we want to help those communities with now, even if they may not close for another 7-8 years? Begin those discussions, because these transitions take a long time. We made a commitment to the Navajo Nation overall to make this transition work. And so I think there's opportunities to do it no matter if you're an investor-owned utility, public power utility, or a co-op utility.
In the case of SRP, they provided information to the community about timelines. They announced that they were going to actually offer jobs to all of the employees. And that was a huge thing. I can't even believe they did that. If I were not offered another job within SRP, I don't know what I would have done.
Providing this level of support, providing these resources, will help to contribute to a vibrant economy here in Arizona. And that is so important for our business success. And so we've got every confidence that this will be beneficial not just for our customers and our employees, but also for our shareholders.
We have reclaimed mine areas. You got Navajo Mine and McKinley Mine near Gallup. Then you got Kayenta and Black Mesa Mine, 3 areas that we can build off to build solar fields. And then we got power lines coming through our homeland. We can light up the city of Phoenix, Tucson.
The negotiations between the utilities and the Navajo Nation has left the Navajo Nation with a certain amount of assets from the Navajo generating station. The Navajo Nation was able to get the water pumps at the generating station. The Navajo Nation was able to get 500 megawatts of transmission lines committed to them from the Bureau of Reclamations. So those are really significant.
The biggest question was, if we have transmission lines and power generating facilities on the Navajo Nation, why are there still Navajo people out there without electricity? A lot of the times people already live where they live. They live in their ancestral areas. They've grown up there for generations, and that's where they want to be. Every community has a group of people who don't have electricity, they don't have water. It's really expensive to run power lines, and so renewable energy really offers those local solutions.
NTUA made a decision a number of years ago to start to develop renewable energy within the reservation, recognizing the abundance of renewable energy available here. We hired approximately 250 local Navajo and trained them. Many of them have gone on to work at other plants and continue to build. Now that they're built, they're providing energy for the local area, reasonably priced and reliable. In addition to that, we sell renewable energy credits to others outside of the Navajo Nation, and the revenue from that goes directly back to construct lines to those folks that currently don't have electric power within the nation.
The COVID-19 death toll continues to rise in the U.S. Fear is mounting the spread of the virus could devastate tribal communities.
I think one of the reasons why we were so impacted on the Navajo Nation with COVID is the fact that you have a lot of people not having access to things as simple as information. A lot of the information was spread through the internet. And when you don't have electricity, you don't have computers, you don't have TV, you don't have satellite, now you're kind of limited to if you get radio signal, if you get cell service. It also limits the storage of their food. This requires them, if they don't have electricity, to go and get ice. If their stores were closed, they were going further out and further out. And so they would have to go to the border towns when our stores weren't open. A lot of our relatives have respiratory issues and they have challenges with the air quality. That being compounded by a virus that attacks that exact thing really affected people that were already in a disadvantaged position. And so owning that process going forward in energy development for us is what we feel is needed in order for us to make sure we don't go down those same paths again. Out of college, I returned back home and I really was looking to create jobs and solve issues for my people. We looked at how we could form a company that would develop projects that we feel are in tune with the cultural and the local values. And we feel like we brought some of those values from Silicon Valley with fundraising and capital investment and markets into the nation, so that we can utilize those resources and those allies to be able to develop our projects.
Now what do we got?
Check that. So reverse your polarity on your leads there and then remeasure.
And guess what's going to happen to my charge controller?
Negative.
Right, you see that negative on there?
We're here in Hard Rock, Arizona, doing our very first solar training, and it's a 6 to 8 week program. We have about 10 Native students who are participating. And this is really a huge effort for us to invest in the Native community and be able to employ our own people to provide off-grid power for families that need it. One of the goals of the workforce training programs that we have here is to prepare and empower local Native people to go into the solar workforce. That doesn't necessarily have to be here on the reservation, and they don't necessarily have to be installers, but we do want to give them the tools to succeed out in the renewable energy world. A lot of the applicants knew or have relatives and family that don't have electricity, so they want to be able to install their own system and know how to maintain it.
This is an immense opportunity for us to think about what traditional indigenous governance works, and it should be established between Indian tribes and not dependent on the federal government. Then we will be able to demonstrate to tribes across the country how they can work collectively to achieve our goals as people who are indigenous to the United States, but not dependent on it to prosper.
There's no model or template for how to do this. We are making this up as we go. But we do believe that it is our social responsibility to ensure that we help these legacy coal communities whose contributions were critical to the success that we experience today, and really for the economy that our nation is built on. This is because of people who have done hard work in coal mines and coal plants. And we owe them a debt of gratitude, ensuring that we don't leave them behind as we make this transition that we have to make. We cannot leave them behind.
Historically, energy has been one of the unfortunate drivers of inequality. Energy is deeply wrapped up in how we distribute wealth in the world. It takes money from all of us to pay for our fuels and our electricity, and it sends it off into the hands of a much smaller array of people and institutions and organizations. We could do a better job of designing that so that the energy system actually works the other way. It becomes a generator of economic security that helps alleviate poverty. It becomes a generator of income.
If we get this transition in northern Arizona right, we can take all the lessons from that and apply them to many other transitions that we'll be facing in the years to come. Like the electric vehicle transformation, we're going to need a transition plan and transition assistance for that to take care of the jobs and the communities that are dependent on the old internal combustion engine that is going to be going away shortly. And the transition that coal communities are facing today are going to be faced by natural gas communities. We're going to start seeing communities suffering from the loss of natural gas fracking, natural gas processing activities, and the power plants that are run on natural gas.
biggest question is, do we have the political will to come together and govern ourselves? That is where we have our biggest problem. If we fail to do so, I think we as a country certainly won't be a global leader anymore. And globally, if we as a species fail to face these things, I think we do face some dire consequences. What that means for us long term, it's hard to say. But, the world will go on. It existed before we were here as a species, and it will exist regardless of where we go. We may leave it damaged behind us, but it will survive us.
How do we ensure that these things exist for our kids into the future? To me, it's that simple. I want to make sure that I have said what I need to say and have done what I needed to do. And that way, at least the future generations will never say to me, why didn't you speak up for me? And, I'll never be to blame. There's nothing that beats a clean conscience, I don't think.